in real life. Today, I'm joined by an interesting guest who's an entrepreneur, who's a CEO, and has led companies across US, UK, Denmark. And over the past 15 years, he has stepped into many leadership roles, navigating growth, uncertainty, and pressure. And now works closely with founders, works on the executives, strategy, performance, and what it truly means to lead when the stakes are high. So welcome to the podcast, Peter Sorgenfrei.
Thanks so much for having me, Gopal. Happy to be here.
Being a CEO is considered to be a cool job. Like people envy it, and people are like working so hard to get or climb that ladder and get to it. But when you reach that place, what are the consequences of it, and what does that do to you as an individual?
I think that's a big question. So let's try to unpack it. Um, you're right. For many people, achieving the ultimate professional role as the chief executive officer seems like a dream, and for many it is, and for many it continues to be. But I think what a lot of people underestimate is once you get to that point, you're very much alone. There are a lot of things that you are expected to know and decide and act upon on your own without dialogue and discourse with others. And there are very few people that you can talk to about what you're dealing with because not everybody has all the information you have, all the perspectives that you have in order to make decisions. So part of the consequence is a lot of founders and CEOs that I work with feel incredibly lonely in their professional lives, and they don't know how to involve others in their decision making processes without them appearing weak or uncertain. And so they're battling that on a daily basis.
And does that introduce certain emotions within one, like stress or feeling, like you said, being lonely or losing anonymity? Like everyone in the company knows who you are, but you as an individual might not know everyone, or if it's a massive company or if it's a big company, right? So does that also introduce a certain emotions that you as an individual needs to be very attuned to?
You're touching upon something super important here. Everybody knows you, and everybody's watching you, right? So you become very self-aware quite quickly that if I, as the CEO, look left, the ship moves left. If I'm having a bad day, it permeates through the organization and people are like, oh, he's in a bad mood. Is something wrong? Do I need to worry about something? And so you recognize that your attitude and behavior is permeating the organization. And so you start putting some restrictions on yourself. You start acting in certain ways. So I may have had a terrible day at home, but when I get to the office, I can't let that shine through, most CEOs think. And so they start hiding their true feelings and their true emotions, not only to others, but actually also to themselves. So that leads to essentially a disequilibrium between who you actually are and who you perform in the role. And the other thing about being a CEO, it's in most cases not a 9 to 5 job. Not only are you available on your devices or you want to be available earlier and later, mentally, you have so many topics and issues that you probably are consumed by it, also mentally, outside of the work. And so it starts becoming your identity. This stoic, all knowing, decisive, stable person. But nobody is that at all times, right? And that causes the stress that you alluded to. That causes people to start suffering from being in that.
But is it important as a CEO to show that side of you, like show the vulnerable side of you, so that people can understand that you are also a human and maybe support you uh, emotionally, or is it something that is a good thing not to show that vulnerable side and be like super confident and portray yourself to be full of
So my
enthusiasm and confidence? Yes.
whole thesis is you should show your vulnerability. My whole approach, as you know, is called the whole human approach. And it's this idea
Mm,
that we're not two individuals. We're not a private person and a professional person. And the reason is, and I think most of your listeners will recognize this, I know, Gopal, if you and I work together, I know when you're not being yourself. I get to know you, I get to know your mannerisms. And even if I'm not fully aware of it, inside of me, this uncertainty starts to build. Where is this guy? What's going on in his life? What's happening? Why is he not being truthful with me? Even though you are being verbally truthful, but emotionally you're not being truthful. And so my argument to all the CEOs that I work with is you need to find a way to be who you are in the environments that you're in. And being vulnerable actually opens you up and endears others to you so that when there's a challenge, either on a personal or professional level, more people will understand how to support and help you. And it doesn't mean we have to sit around and share everything that's going on inside. But by you knowing me, you'll able to adjust your behavior or adjust the way that we work together when you understand that I need that in order to function better in the workplace. So for
mm.
me, openness, transparency, vulnerability is the only way. And I think certainly in our part of the world here in Denmark, more and more founder CEOs start to understand that and live that. In other cultures, so I work across 13 different countries with 60 plus founder CEOs at this point. And there are places in the world where that's not happening anytime soon. You cannot be open and vulnerable because of the way that the cultures are there. And so in those environments, we need to do something different.
So it's important for a CEO or people in leadership position to have defined values, like you said, being open, honest, transparent. There could be more. And whenever there are things that lead you towards uncertainty, you fall back on those values, so that then you have like something like a guiding principle that you should always be transparent, irrespective of what happens in your life, because that's one of your principles or values that you have defined in the beginning or whenever you have defined it. So it's important to have values, is what I understand, right?
It's not only important to have them, but it's also important to live them.
Mm,
So, I happen to know that you're married, and I use this example a lot of times. Is in our relationships, are we always fully transparent and honest with our partners? And most people will
mm,
say yes. I'm like, all right, let's use this in an experiment. Honey, do I look fat in this dress? Right? I think all
yeah,
of us who are married to women can relate to that question. And the answer is we are not always honest and transparent because we, of course, as humans know that certain circumstances require certain finesse. However, that is a slippery slope because in the dress example, no, honey, you look amazing, even though she does look, maybe it's a little bit tight. Who knows? Then, honey, what do you think we should do for dinner? Do you prefer this thing or that thing? In this scenario, I'm the one making the dinner. My partner's answering the question. And she goes, whatever you like. Actually, she would prefer this thing, but she doesn't express it. And so all those little decisions that we make, we also make in business. And if we're not coming back to saying, no, actually, I want the document in this way because I know that this is how I uh, perceive information and interpret information the best way. If we
mm,
don't do that over time, people are going to start delivering something, and little by little it adds up. And I'm going to be frustrated with Gopal because he never delivers what I want. That's actually not
mm,
true. He delivers exactly what I have told him that I want. Now,
mm.
and I'll finish this last point. Some listeners might be saying, oh, well, that's micromanagement. No, that's a different thing. It's about being clear and transparent about how you work best and how you receive information best. I'm not telling you exactly how to do it. I'm saying, Gopal, in order for you and I to have a fruitful professional relationship, you should know that I prefer situation, complication, resolution in the documents that you sent me. It's clear for you what that means. And if it's not, I will explain it to you.
Mm.
And whenever I receive something from you, I'm going to be happy because you give it to me in a way that I can use the best.
But when you work in different parts of the world, do you see that, for example, Denmark, it's easy for people to be transparent and open about their thoughts, about their feelings, even in the leadership position, because that's how the society supports it, or that's how people around you support it. But when you are working in UK, or let's say in different parts of the world, do you see these values being changed drastically?
There's a massive difference between, say, the Middle East and the Nordics,
Mm,
and between some Asian countries and of course, North American. So we do have these axes in the world in terms of how that works. But I believe the fundamental human behavior is one of, I prefer as a human, whether I'm Saudi or Japanese or American, to actually know where somebody is on a topic, right? I
mm,
prefer to understand that my boss is standing here in this way on this topic. Now, how that's communicated might be different across cultures, but the
mm,
fundamental human feeling and behavior is the same.
mm.
So the
Ex-
cultural nuances are just, how do I, as a Japanese person, have a dialogue with my boss so that he or she can be fully transparent with me and vice versa?
mm. That that's important to understand that. I mean, these days people work across culture. Like it's no longer that I work in Denmark and I only get to work with Danish employees or Danish individuals, but like I would be interacting with 10 to 15 nationalities and having an understanding or a sense of how each culture works is also very important, I guess, from a leadership point of view. So that when you take such or when you have such conversations, you are not offending, or you are coming out as transparent as possible, at the same time not offending certain individuals. And that's what I have I have reflected when I work with with people in my domain. But another point that I wanted to touch upon is I heard this in a podcast. The founder of Spotify, Daniel Ek, he compared leadership to being a parent, and that analogy was like awesome for me. He said that there are three stages of parenthood and decision making, meaning in stage one, you are literally all your decisions that you take is like life and death for that for the baby or for your child. And then in stage two, you are involved or you can get involved only when the baby or the child takes certain decisions that have long term consequences. So you step in and say, hey, this is good, this is not good. And then you step back. And then the last, or when the child has grown up, you are you just need to be there. You don't have to take decisions. You just need to be present so that when they need you, they come back to you. And he compared that to being a founder and creating your baby,
Mhm.
like your product, and then taking all the decisions around it in stage one, and then stepping back in stage two, and stepping back in stage three. And then I was reflecting on that thought, and I was like, how important it is for leaders to understand delegation.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
So
would like to know your thoughts.
yeah, so Daniel is obviously spot on. Um, and he the correlation he makes is to the age of the company.
Mm,
But you could also say that on the age of the relationship with your employee. So when you and I, let's say you and I start working together, I report to you. In the beginning, you're going to be much closer to me and you're going to be much more aware of what I do, how I do it, make small adjustments, be available for questions, that kind of thing. And then over time, as our relationship evolves, you're going to be less and less involved. And then after a period, you're basically only going to hear from me when I raise my hand and say, "Hey, Gopal, I need your perspective here." Right. So it's not only the age of the company, it's also the age of the relationship. Um, Delegation is paramount. And a lot of people delegate tasks, and that's wrong. You should delegate the outcome. And the difference is, I say to you, Gopal, or you say to me in this scenario, you're my boss, you say, "Hey, Peter, write this memo." That's a task. The outcome is, "Peter, we need to convince our client to do this thing, figure it out." And I may then decide, because I know the client, that I'm going to write a memo, but I'm also going to follow up with a phone call and I'm going to take them out to lunch. You've delegated the outcome, not the task.
Mm,
And the reason we want to delegate the outcome and not the task is, in order for us to leverage the talent that we have in our own organizations, we need them to figure out, the people who are closest to the problem, so to speak, close to the challenge, what is the right methodology to get this outcome achieved. You're in
mm,
no position to do that. So it's easy when you're in the top of the organization, right? A CEO of the company you work for or somewhere else has a group of very experienced operators and executives underneath them. So they don't actually delegate a lot of tasks. They delegate outcomes, right? We need to get to this profitability or improve our customer retention or whatever it is. You guys figure it out. The lower your organization, or the more inexperienced you are as a manager, the more likely it is that you outsource the task, because that's all you know how to do, right? You look at your task list, and then you're like, I can't do this one. I'm going to send it over to my colleague.
mm,
Um, so that's number one on delegation. Number two is, think about what grows your people when you delegate, right? Um, in essence, a good CEO or a good manager of others, when he or she sends on an outcome, they do it in a way so that the recipient knows that this will make them better. They may not know how to do it, and that's fine, but they know going through the process will make them a better professional human being. Because at the end of the day, everybody who works in any company, you can join it for prestige, you can join it for money, you can join it for need because you have to pay your rent or your. But at the end of the day, people are searching for a meaning with what they do. And meaning is growth, right? If I grow what I do, I find it meaningful. If I learn something, I find it meaningful. And so when we delegate, if we have that lens, saying, I'm going to make sure that Peter, when he gets my outcome that I'm delegating, Peter will grow in that role. He will be the best employee I've ever had, because he will find meaning, he will enjoy it, and he's going to provide do a bang up job.
mm. And that's being very positive mindset in terms of being delegation, right?
Yes.
Uh, but I have come across, or I have observed, not come across, but I've observed founders, um, wherein it's not always this positive mindset. There is some sort of an insecurity that is attached in delegation, meaning I have these high level, what do you call, areas, and I want to delegate it, but at the same time I don't want that individual that I'm delegating to destroy my vision of that area. Uh, so that insecurity, or I don't know if I should call that insecurity, but it's always running in the back of. I observe that it's running in the back of the mind. So do you see that it's always a um, positive mindset when it is coming to delegation, or have you come across these insecurities or being negative when it is about delegating?
Um, I'm referenced often as the incurable optimist. So I fundamentally believe in the good in people and their intentions. But what you're talking about is actually not delegation,
Mm,
not even control,
mm,
it's trust.
mm,
So a lot of founder CEOs have a very high level of self-confidence,
mm,
right? I mean, that's kind of required to get to that point. They don't have high self-worth, different story, but they have high self-confidence, which means they believe, not because they're bad people, but they believe that they know exactly how to do something. And so what you're describing is them not actually fully trusting their people, them not fully trusting their people to be able to do it as well as they could. So in their minds, they're battling the need to delegate because that's the only way we grow and scale with their need to have it be exactly the way that they would have done it. Those two things cannot coexist. So what I teach founders and CEOs is, listen, it is better that more things get done at 80% or 70% or 60% of the perfection level that you would have
mm,
than you not being able to use your mind on the decisions that only you can use your mind on, B, things not getting done.
mm,
And once you start looking through that frame, most people say, okay, let me try this. Let me, Gopal says, okay, I'm going to give Peter these things, these outcomes. I know he's not going to deliver the exact same thing that I wanted. But if I weigh that against it not getting done, or if I weigh that against the time liberated for me to do other things, it's still a net positive. Therefore, we're going to do it.
mm.
It is a very big topic for founders and CEOs.
And what I've observed is it's also a power struggle. So meaning I delegate this task, and then this individual, like I trust this individual, but then it's also like I am giving a part of my responsibility and power to this individual, like based on that trust, right? And if that is misused, then there is always a power struggle that I've observed in the founders. I don't know if you have come across such things. Or,
Uh, No, I have not. I can't say I have. Well, so maybe I'm not fully understanding the premise. Um, in my mind, in most cases, in well-functioning companies, there is no power struggle.
mm,
Roles are clearly defined, expectations are clearly defined, contribution is clearly defined.
mm,
The ones where there is, as you put it, power struggle, is typically where roles and responsibilities are unclear. And so the gray area arrives. And that is a failure of leadership. That
that's
is,
a very good point.
that is a failure of the person who gets to determine roles and responsibilities and expectations for outcomes.
That is a very good point because I have been part of such organizations wherein it was very murky. Like the roads were very murky, and I couldn't see a clear structure in place. And that's where I could now I can connect the dots, and that's where the power struggle happened because people assumed that this was my area of responsibility, and then the same assumption happened on the other side, and then that inflicted a conflict. Um, Coming back to delegation, how important it is. Um, what is the importance of hiring process in a company?
There's no more, I've been quoted saying this many times.
Mm,
The number one thing that a company needs to get right is hiring. There is no more important job than hiring, period.
mm,
There is no more important job for the CEO to be involved in than hiring. But in most companies, hiring happens too fast, too unstructured, as
mm.
an afterthought, and the candidates are not carefully and truly vetted for being the right fit in the organization.
And what would be the criteria? Like, let's say I need to pick a right candidate. Is that based on my defined values? Like we discussed before, that the candidate needs to be transparent, needs to be X, Y, Z. And if they don't match 80% to those values, I should not hire those candidates? Or is there a criteria that needs to be set?
One of the reasons that hiring is so difficult is you can't do it by criteria.
Okay.
So I'm a little bit older than you, but I remember the days when you would send a resume, CV, and they would scan the resume based on where did you go to school, what kind of brands did you work for, what kind of titles did you have, and then
Mm,
that would kind of be the first filter. And then you would go through an interview process, maybe meet a hiring manager, somebody from HR, maybe meet the hiring manager's boss, and that was it. Of course, now we do all sort of psychometric testing and all sorts of other things. The criteria you should use on both sides is this person a fit for where we are today and where we're going to in the future? Meaning, can they work within our culture? Can they work within the group that they're being assigned to, like the marketing team or whatever it is? Can they evolve the skill set that they need to evolve while they're here? So can they learn stuff? Can they deal with all the uncertainty that comes with working in our current environments? We used to say that startups were really crazy and uncertain, but now, as you can see, you work at Novo and all of a sudden they lay off 9,000 people, right? So uncertainty is everywhere. Can they manage that? And fundamentally, are they fully understanding of what it is that we do here?
mm,
So I don't know when you last interviewed, but if anybody's listening to this, when you're interviewing, what most people do is they put on their nice clothes, they sit up straight, they answer the questions the best they've learned how to. They may even have practiced. That's not how you show up on Tuesday morning in March, right? So a service you can do to yourself and a service that the company can do to you is be who you are in the interview process. Talk like you normally would talk. Care about the things you normally care about. Because not only does the company have to decide whether they want to employ you, the real you, but you also have to decide whether or not you want to come work with them. And
that's a very good point.
right, so it's kind of like dating, you know. My girlfriend, when we started dating 4 years ago, she, a couple of years in, we've known each other. She said, "Yeah, I felt like you were peacocking when we were dating." I'm like, "What the hell does that mean?" She was like, "Oh yeah, but you were like telling all these stories and you're putting all this nice clothes." She wasn't criticizing me. She was basically just illustrating the point that I was trying to be, be more attractive than I probably am, right? And it's the same thing with recruitment. We should be who we are and understand that if we are that, we end up with companies who accept us who we are, the way that we work, the way that we operate, and we're going to be happier there than trying to fit into something that we're not, even though we can get the job by doing that.
Mm.
I don't know if that fully answered your question. I feel like we went a little bit around there, but
It did. And what I observed, I have been on both sides of the table, being an interviewee and being an interviewer. And I guess there is a lot of peacocking that happens in the process in itself, both from a company, like as an interviewer, you try to sell stuff which doesn't exist just to show that the company is like super awesome, is doing really good, that is very good culture, stuff like that. And then the interviewee also does a lot of peacocking, saying, "I am the best person alive on this planet," and blah blah blah. And I have, based on my experience, this there has always been a bit of peacocking on both the sides. I've not had, or I've not been a part of an interview process which went as transparent as I wish it could. Uh,
exactly. And but you know why you do that, right? You do that because obviously you need a job. You need to pay your mortgage. You need to buy food. So we understand the dynamics. I've across my 6 companies over the last 15 years, I've hired 300 plus people. And in the beginning, I was the first person they talked to and the last. And then over time, as the companies got bigger, I got involved later in the process. But in every single interview I've ever had, I said to the candidate, you need to make absolutely sure that you fully understand what it means to come work here with us or work with me. And if you have any questions whatsoever, I need you to ask them now. Because honestly, dear candidate, part of my job is to convince you not to take this job because I want to make sure that you really get behind what we're trying to accomplish, how we work, how we see the world, so that in a year and a half from now, when it's cold, gray, and rainy here in Denmark, and we're asking you to stand on the rooftop and mount an antenna so that our self driving bus can navigate Nordhavn, and your phone rings and it's a competitor and they're going to offer you 10,000 kroners more, you're not going to say yes. That's the level of intimacy and intelligence I want you to put into this decision. And so
Wow,
a lot of candidates, when they heard that, they're like, holy shit, sorry, I swore. Holy,
that's fine.
this person, this is different. And as a result, Gopal, I sincerely believe, and we should go out and ask a bunch of people who work for me. We created environments where people were the happiest and did their most productive work. And they still talk about it to this day. Like, okay, the beginning was tough because Peter's a pretty demanding boss. He's kind, but he's pretty demanding. Holy smokes, this was the best environment I've ever been in because I knew exactly what I was buying and I was allowed to be who I was.
Very interesting. But is that something that you learned in your journey of being a CEO, or is it something that came to you naturally? Is that intuition, or is there a way to learn this?
I got very, very lucky early in my career. My first company was founded in 2005 and it was a consultancy. And my first hire, which should be any CEO's or startup person's first hire, was my personal assistant. Sounds very fancy. It's not. It's basically somebody who does everything so that you can do other things. This woman, her name is Miriam, and she was a 22, 23-year-old bartender from England who had moved to New York for love. She starts working with me. A couple of months in, she's like, Peter, we need to talk about something. I have no idea what you want or how you want to work. Why don't you write it down? And so she forced me to write down what has later become the PUC, the Peter User Guide, which is a 7-page document that talks about how I, as a boss, see the world, how I like to work, how I like to receive information, what my mood means, how I communicate. Basically, this kind of guide to how I operate. And part of that guide was me writing down my values. And in that, I wrote back then, I don't believe in being somebody you're not. Yeah, I don't want people to pretend. I don't want you to. And so that became the guiding light, if you will, for our recruitment process. And I started saying that to people. I say, I have this user guide. In it, it says, I don't believe in you being somebody you're not. So tell me who you are, and I will do the same. So it was a little bit of an accident that it became the mantra, but it's worked out incredibly well over the last 20 years.
So, have just an outlier question: Have you have done a lot of interviews? Has anyone able to pass through your filter, and then at the end you're like, "Oh my God, it's a huge mistake," and you updated your puck book with that saying, "Don't do this in the future."
Um, I didn't update the puck because it was less about that. It was I've probably done north of 5,000 interviews, maybe even more than that. And I can remember 5 people that I shouldn't have hired out of 300. And the thing that is the red thread across all of these 5 is I went too fast. I felt pressured by external circumstances. Either a team that said, we really, 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 really need this person, Peter. We can't have you put the kibosh on. Because I did that a lot. They would interview somebody, everybody was in love with the person. I would meet them and be like, no. And they would be frustrated, obviously, right? So on the occasions where I didn't do that, where I didn't listen to what I knew was right, and I said, okay, let's go ahead. Or when I didn't spend enough time with the candidate myself and went too quick, um, that those have been the instances where I got it wrong.
Mm.
Again, back to my dating analogy, it is rare for people to go on 2 dates and decide that they're going to spend the rest of their lives together. It is not rare for people to go on a bunch of dates, move in together, live that life, and then decide they want to spend the rest of their lives together. And it's the same thing with recruitment. As I said
Mm.
initially, the vast majority of people spend way too little time getting to know the candidates, and the candidates spend too little time getting to know the company.
With regards to that, let's say I am a founder that is building a company, newly built, or is an expanding company. We are two, will be four, will be 100. That's the trajectory that I'm seeing. How important it is for me as a founder to start thinking about company culture, and what does it mean when I say I have to start building a culture?
Culture is not something you build. Culture is something that happens. And
Okay.
so to me, it happens because of the people who are in the boat. It's the group of the individuals who come together and through either explicit rules, we do a stand up every day where we talk about these topics, or implicit rules, like this is how we greet each other when we show up in the morning because Bodil is a hugger, so she comes and hugs everybody, and Gopal he brings cake every other week because he likes to bake or whatever. So culture is something that happens, and it's guided by the people who are in the boat, which comes back to what we've just discussed. The culture you end up having is essentially the culture you deserve because it's based on the choices that you make on who you hire. So if I'm a
Mm.
founder CEO and I'm starting a company, I'm just myself, and I'm interviewing you, part of my lens is yes, he's an amazing engineer. He has the technical creds. He's had the experience that I think will prepare him for what we're doing. He has the mentality to be able to be on that journey. He has the personality, not the classic, can I have a beer with this guy? Because I actually think that's bullshit. But is this person fundamentally somebody who I think will contribute positively to what we're going to do? And can I see him and I together, because in the beginning it's just you and me, do this and get more people that will create an environment that I would love to be a part of? That's what you think as a founder CEO. Um, and again, most don't. Most are like, holy Batman, I need somebody who can design me a website. This guy was recommended by this guy. I'm going to hire him. And that's the
Mm.
wrong way of doing it.
And that also points back to how, like you said, how important the hiring process is. But being a person who hires, I mean, if you are a founder, I'm sure these are the things that you keep in back of your mind, that the person that I'm hiring, like you said, doesn't just join my competition or a competitor because just because they start paying money. So they need to have integrity, and things like those are something that you assess during the interview process. And God forbid that you start hiring in a wrong way. That is something that would be reflected in the company culture, is what I'm hearing. Because people make culture, and the wrong people that you hire, slowly you can realize that my company culture is dissolving, and those are not based on the values that, like, being open, transparent, and whatever that I have defined. So it's important for a founder who are hiring to first understand what their core values are, like you said, and then hire people that align with such values, so that then you can scale companies without destroying the culture. So that's good. That's good for me to like. I always thought that you put something on piece of paper, and that's how you start building up culture.
I think a lot of people think that. But again, back to
Mm.
human behavior. You can tell your partner that you love her, and she probably believes it. She,
Mm.
I'm sure she believes it. But if your behavior show her that you care about the things that she cares about, you're folding the laundry without her asking, or you don't ask her what's for dinner, but say, honey, I'm fixing dinner tonight. I got the groceries, whatever it is. I use very sort of traditional things here, but I think that's easy for people to understand. Showing somebody that you see them, that you understand what matters to them, makes them feel loved at a more visceral level than you on the way out the door. You kiss your child and you kiss your wife and say, love you, and then you're out the door. Two different things, right? And it's the same with company culture. How do I, in the day to day, show you that I am transparent, or show you that I care about us getting along? It's
Mm.
not by writing it on the wall, teamwork is the dream work or whatever it is. It's about actually showing you, right?
I agree. Um, Moving to another topic, which is my favorite. What is the role of failure um, in a person's life or in your life, or maybe how important it is for founders and CEOs to embrace failure or understand failure?
So I think most people will probably recognize that failure is something that can teach us something. And again, back to sayings on the wall, right? Fall down 7, get up 8 is one of my Japanese favorite sayings. Um, but there's a big difference between how it makes you feel inside. Am I failing because I fundamentally am not good enough, right? A good example is I don't run marathons, but if I did, I could say I want to run a marathon in 3.5 hours. I run that marathon in 3 hours and 38 minutes. Technically speaking, I failed. But I think most people, after they go through that experience, they'll be like, that was pretty darn good. I'm pretty proud of myself. Pretty happy, right?
I
If we
mean,
go to, if we go to companies, I am going to try and secure funding for my business. I'm going to raise $10 million, and I go through the process and I don't succeed. That's also failing. But the consequences of that failure is much greater, because now all of a sudden I have to lay off people, or I have to close up shop or go home. So failure can be many things. My point here is it's how we relate to the failure. It is
mhm.
it is how detrimental it is to our lives that we failed. And here's the kicker. Nothing in life is failure that is absolute. Meaning, unless you die, literally, there's always another day. There's always another shot. There's always another door. There's always another opportunity. There's always another investor. There's always another partner in life. There's always another. So once you start understanding that whatever happens to you or happens with you, because I don't believe things happen to you in that sense, a different philosophical discussion, you actually didn't fail. You just met an obstacle, or you didn't reach a goal that you had or an ambition that you had, but it's not the ultimate failure. You can always go around and try again. Different
What doesn't
method.
kill you makes you stronger.
Indeed, and that's really something that goes on a wall, right? And it sounds stupid, but it's true. The reason people struggle with failure is because they take it into their identity. And I did the same thing, and I don't know if you want to talk about that today, but
Sure.
I've gone through that.
Mm.
In 2019, my body shut down, my mind shut down. I basically, from stress, the neurons didn't connect. I got incapacitated. I was lying down more or less for 6 weeks. Some days literally not able to physically move my body. I couldn't lift my arms and stuff. It was super weird. But the biggest issue there was my entire identity, who I was as a human on the face of this planet, was tied to being a founder and CEO.
Mm.
I had an existential crisis, if you will, at 45, which is also not unusual. Young, Lebenswende, 50-year midlife crisis, all this other stuff. And so for me, lying there, and the subsequent year that it took me to kind of figure out, who am I if I'm not a builder, if I'm not a CEO, taught me that what I thought was failure was just a recalibration of who I actually was. I'd been going in one direction for so long. I've been using only the left side of my brain, the rational, logical side of my brain. And essentially, I defined myself as a one-dimensional person, a professional person who was rational and logical and executing things. I hadn't even leveraged my right side of my brain, the creative, inventive, energizing side, right? Um, so having that experience taught me that there is no such thing as failure. There is
Mm.
only detours, readjustments, recalibrations. And I think most people
And
can learn that without going through that experience.
I mean that makes a lot of sense with when you say fall down 7 and get up 8 is such a profound statement, right? But it's also important to understand how to embrace it, and it's very difficult for people to embrace failure or embrace these negative things that happens to you, like stress, for example. When your intellectual level is constantly giving you negative inputs and your emotional level is having a lot of anger, um, and you're constantly being told that okay, something is not as per the plan, the body on some level starts shutting down. Like this is based on my experience too, like because it's something that is out of your control, constant negative thoughts and constant anger being suppressed, and on both from an
Let me
emotional
challenge
layer
you on
and
that
as
one, Gopal, because you're saying
okay,
it's beyond your control. What are thoughts?
neurons connecting or talking to each other. I don't know.
Not even, right? I mean, there's no biology there. It is a concept that appears in your mind
Hmm.
that is beyond your control. You don't control what you think about. So I don't
On
know.
some
Yeah,
on some level, you can influence it. Let's say meditation, for example.
exactly. What is
You can
meditation then?
just focusing on something for a prolonged period of time, like trying to ignore whatever pops up in your head.
I disagree.
Okay.
Meditation is being aware that you have thoughts. It is not being focused on the thought. So, a very common meditation technique that I teach is this idea of clouds. So
Mm.
basically, you're sitting anywhere. You can also be standing in line in the supermarket, doesn't matter. And a thought enters your mind. I have to remember to buy canned tomatoes. And what you do is you're just like, that's a thought. You recognize that it's a thought. It's like a cloud that passes through in the sky. That's why I keep doing this with my hand, right? Oh, this guy cut me off in traffic. He was a freaking idiot. That's just a thought. Oh, what's that number? I have to remember. Was it 75 or was it 57? That's a thought. So you can relate to your thoughts. My favorite Stoic, Epictetus, said there are only two things you control in your life: your actions. I pick up the pen, I touch my glasses. And number two is how I relate to my thoughts, not your actual thoughts. So if I'm thinking I'm not good enough, that's actually not who I am. That's an idea. That's a thought. So if I say to myself, wait a minute, that's just a thought. Once you start practicing that, you realize that 99.9% of the things that happen in your head are beyond your control. And therefore, you
True.
should try to control them. You should just be aware that they are there.
But what I experienced when I went through this phase was these thoughts are persistent. Like you said, there is a thought that I need to buy a tomato. It's very easy to compartmentalize it and say, I might not need it, or
But
I'm
let's
aware
take
of
this.
that thought.
Can we do a real example? Would you be comfortable doing that?
Sure,
So,
let's
so
do
give
that.
me give me a pervasive thought that you had.
I had, or I don't
So,
know the
going through
pervasive
this experience,
meaning. Sorry, we are cutting off each other. Pervasive meaning. I don't. My English is a bit not on the strong side. Uh,
let's say you have a
pervasive.
negative thought,
Mm,
keeps coming back.
you're not good enough
Okay. My first question to you is, why do you tell yourself you're not good enough?
because let's say my actions. I didn't fulfill my actions at the time I should have fulfilled it.
So you're criticizing yourself for not having done something at the time you should have done it. Okay.
Yes,
Let's go back to that time where you didn't do it. Why didn't you do it?
I think it was just a stupid decision.
What decision was it that you made that you think was stupid?
I was again back then, and this is around 2018, 19. Back then, I was not mature enough to understand these are thoughts. I need to take action on them. So I should have taken an action, which I panicked or I didn't react for that thought. And then that is consuming a lot of my energy by constantly coming up in my thoughts, like, you didn't do it, you didn't do it, you could have done it, you could have done, even though I realize it that these are negative, I can suppress it, but it just, keeps on coming back.
Can you time travel?
You mean hypothetically? Yes.
But in real life, can we time travel? Can you go back in time?
Only thoughts. No, I can't.
You can't go back in time. So can you do things differently than you did back then? You used a lot of should have, could have, would have. I didn't know. I wasn't mature. You're talking about something that's happened. It could have been happening 5 minutes ago. It could have happened 5 years ago, but it's happened. Until you learn how to time travel, the
Mm,
only thing you can control is literally what happens right now, right? We've been speaking for 54 minutes and 34 seconds. I can't tell you what's going to happen in 5 seconds. I have a pretty good recollection of what happened 5 seconds ago, but whatever I imagine happened 54 minutes ago is highly inaccurate even at this point, because I cannot recount exactly what you said when we got on this podcast. I cannot recount exactly what I answered when you asked me questions.
mm,
So the only thing that is real, like real, is what happens at minute 55 and 10 seconds right now, right here. And which means when we start having these thoughts about I should have, would have, could have, that's gone. I
mm,
can only control two things: my actions. I'm going to lean into the camera to speak to Gopal. I'm going to take notes to remember something brilliant. That's within my control. Everything else, I can't do anything about.
mm. And that's what I realized while meditating. I mean, about controlling those thoughts, or observing those thoughts, not controlling those thoughts, observing those thoughts just by focusing on breathing. I mean, that was something that I followed a YouTube video or something, and I started doing it, and that made me reflect a lot. And this was a long time ago, 6, 7 years ago, and that has influenced a lot of things in my life. Um,
I teach
but that's why.
everybody I work with, I teach meditation, every single one. And these are type A personalities, highly driven, highly energized. If they're not doing a triathlon, they're doing a high rocks while they're learning a third language and raising $15 million and being married with small kids, whatever, right?
Mm,
Getting these guys and some women
mm,
to sit still for just 30 seconds materially changes their life. It doesn't take more than 30 seconds every single day. Sit down, look at your hand, observe your hand, the nails, the color of the skin, the veins, the hair if you have hair on your hands, the shapes, the feeling of your hands, the air on your hands, that kind of thing. If people start doing that for 30 seconds every day, they will start seeing that their ability to remain calm under pressure increases, their ability to handle external stress increases.
and what also helped me a lot is exercise. Not that I am doing like marathons, but what I could realize is that it influenced my nervous system. Again, things that I can't control, but this happened gradually, and that reduced some level of stress, I would assume, or my body's ability to cope stress, I would say, is also my experience. But that only happened when I started embracing these thoughts and embracing stress. Um, yeah. Final question. Now that we are almost an hour long in our talk, would you ever go back and embrace your life of being a CEO, or would you ever want to be a CEO again?
No, I don't. And it's not because there's anything wrong with the role. I've been asked many, many times in the last 5 years if I wanted to join an existing business, start a new business, do all these other things. But I was lucky enough to figure out and find my life's work at 45. And I love what I do with clients.
Mhm, Mm,
I love the life that I have. I have massive flexibility. I can say no to whatever I want, which you can't when you're a CEO. So I have complete control. I typically say the two things that matter most in my personal life is flexibility and control. So I get to decide on what I do and I get to decide when I do it. And
that's
you can't have that when you're a CEO. And it's not because I'm super wealthy. It's not because I've made my money. I'm just sitting here and counting it. It's because I've decided that I wanted to design the life that I want and then find the work that fits it versus the other way around, which is most of us, we go find a job that we think we want and then we try to fit in life next to it. I think that's ass backwards.
that's that's great insights. And for people who want to be guided, for people who are in stress, who are like CEOs who are in stress, and needs to be guided, how do they find you?
I'm very easy to find. petersorgenfrei.com. If you Google me, you'll find all sorts of stuff. LinkedIn is popular. I think if you're listening to this and something feels off, whether it's in your relationship, with your health, your sleep, in your workplace, talk to somebody before it feels too much, right? If something is just a little bit off, reach out to either me or somebody else that you find and have a conversation. It probably will help you fix whatever is going on.
With that, thank you everyone for listening, and thank you, Peter, for being here and spending or giving me 1 hour of your time.
Happy to
Um,
be here.